I welcome you all to the session. I have the dubious distinction of introducing your first speaker to this session, and that would be me. So, to start with this, and you know what, I'll be smart. I'm turning the stopwatch on so I don't run over because I don't want to miss lunch. Or more accurately, don't want all of you to miss lunch. Okay, a little bit about myself. Oops. I apologize. Apparently, I've got grandfather on the mind. It's both first and last on the slide. Okay, this is my 6th year presenting things related to VoIP fraud, security, and network at Asterisk. First one was back 2011 in December, where I got roped into a lovely panel where the other person had a death in the family, and I got pulled in with NEAR. And you'll find that one unofficially on YouTube under the title, Yikes, $400,000 of fraud. Very interesting case study of what happens. So today I decided to go a little off my normal path. All of us understand what is Asterisk, what is voice over IP. Most of us are running it for our own company or for customers and managing it. The big question that I haven't seen really covered in the last couple of years is, what do I do to make sure it's up, it's running, it's stable? So this year I'm going to use a couple of examples, show some screenshots from customer case studies that we've done, and kind of explain what you need to do to monitor and maintain your network. So, okay. The obvious question is when do you want to start monitoring? Okay? Do you want to start it when there's a problem, when you're in pre-production, when you're going into production, when management starts saying, well, what is our SLA? Why are people asking us for this? Okay, and there's a real simple answer. But first, you have to understand that this is telecom, okay? Most of us don't deal with carrier side of telecom, but there's something called the Telemanagement Forum, okay, which put out a set of standards over the last 20 years that were adopted by the ITUT as the standard of how you're supposed to have all of these systems and make them work, okay? So this is a standard ETOM model that shows the different verticals involved with doing what is called OSS, fault performance, trouble ticketing, monitoring your system, and BSS, customer support, billing, all of the things that are related to the business side. And this is how they've defined it. This is the high-level view. This then drills down to modules, interconnects, and things of that nature. I'm not going to go into that. If you have questions, I will be happy to show you where to get the information and some of the articles I've written. Okay? So why the monitoring? Okay? You want to know the status of your servers. You want to know, is your product or service up and running? How is it running? Okay? You want to be able to start anticipating problems. The hard drive on my Asterisk server has now rapidly gone from 50 to 90%. I can expect that if it's growing that rapidly that I'm going to run into a problem very shortly. I'm running processes and suddenly I'm getting memory errors. You could start to see concepts. Okay? Oops, down. Okay? Wait a second. Okay. When do you start monitoring? This was one of the questions I started. Do you do it at QA? Do you do it at load testing? Okay, the end-to-end testing? When you're staging? The answer is no. You do it the second day. You've written your code, you've configured your PBX, everything is ready to go. Before or as you go live, you want to be monitoring what's happening. Okay, and this can be monitoring simply false performances, network status, and I'll show you a couple tools for that in a second, up to being able to monitor things, are there error codes? Are things going on with intrusion detection? You need to understand the kinds of things that are happening in your network, okay? So let's start with, because our networks are not exclusively PBXs, what do we want to monitor? Devices, the laptops and equipment that is running the soft phone. The servers that are running alongside it. I mean, as long as we're monitoring things, we might as well monitor everything, okay? Am I looking at the firewalls, the routers, the access points, the VoIP phones, okay? And yes, I do mean all the way down to the VoIP phone on the desk, okay? Now, the question of when and why you want to monitor comes down to the big question as to what you don't want to monitor. Okay, so the photo here is a good example. Okay, anybody know about the tar drop experiments? It's the longest running experiment, started in the mid-1940s, and they just took a piece of pit tar, put it in something in its solid chunk, and they let it drip. About once every 10 years, it actually lets loose a drop. Okay? Something that is this slow is not something you want to monitor. If it happens once per 10 years, it's not relevant. Okay? The first time that they tried to get the video of this, it failed in Australia. Okay? Trinity College in Ireland managed to succeed, and 2 years ago actually managed to catch that exact second that the drop separated. And if you go onto Google, you can actually see a video clip of the time lapse of that. Okay, what kinds of tools, what kinds of things do you want to be monitoring with? Okay, ZenOS, MKCheck. Isinga, which is what I will be talking a lot about, is a fork off of Nagios, which is the N, why I'm mentioning it first, which is a fault monitoring system. Okay, I could put it, most of what I've put here are things that are open source or have free versions. Other options are moving towards HP OpenView, moving towards really ridiculously expensive systems like Amdocs, what used to be TTI, but they've now been bought out, which have multi-million-dollar solutions. Okay, if you're Verizon, a $3 million, $10 million solution is fine. I don't think very many of us in this room are willing to put $3 million just into monitoring the network. None of our customers are usually that big. So you look at Nagios, you look at Isinga, you look at Homer to look at the SIP path and check the mean score, actually do the SIP debugging. Humbug, which does fraud detection. Okay? There are a lot of tools. The question is, what are you looking for and how? Okay? Am I doing in time? Good, 20 minutes. So I'm going to give 4 very quick case studies. A small business, single PBX, bunch of phones located in multiple locations, connected via SIP. Stored, the PBX on that one is on the cloud. Second one is a multinational enterprise. 11 PBXs in 9 countries on 5 continents. All interconnected, running on a variety of things from bare metal to VMs to Amazon to a Pika box. An MVNO that is running out of the UK. Okay? And a service that is providing interconnect services and monitoring for the various customers running it. Currently running on something on the order of 20,000 servers around the world. 20,000 servers around the world, keeping the service up and running, so you have to do other things to monitor it. Okay? If you have questions, please raise your hand. I'll ask Or to run around with the microphone. First case, small business, 1 location based out of New York, strictly handling services in the New York City area, including Long Island. Server is located in the Amazon cloud, and they are running simple things, phones in the office, phone in the manager's house, phone in the manager's brother's house in Israel. Okay? Not too difficult, running straight SIP or IAX2 connections. We're monitoring strictly the server status and uptime using built-in things within FreePBX. They really don't care. They don't have a lot of hits. They don't care if they're down for 15, 20 minutes too much. It's a straightforward, minimal setup. Okay? We tried to convince them to do a little bit of monitoring with Isinga or something like that. They didn't need it. Okay? So things have run into unusual situations, and the example I will give of the brute force attack actually is their PBX that I will be showing later, using fail-to-ban and some basic firewall whitelisting. Okay? But when they ran into problems with connectivity between why is this phone unable to connect to the server, because there was no Isinga, because there was no Logstash, because there was no monitoring, we had to go back and try and recreate the problem, digging through the Asterisk and the FreePBX logs until we finally found out what the problem was, and it turned out that in that particular case, that the home router had a firewall built in that blocked SIP. They did a software upgrade and suddenly it stopped working, okay? So we had no intrusion detection to tell us of change management, which would have solved a lot of time and a lot of problem. So this is one example. This is one extreme. Multinational enterprise, 11 offices, 10 countries on 5 continents. The VP there promises me that when they open one in Antarctica, we will get to go down and install the Asterisk there personally instead of doing it remotely. They are a slightly different situation. They are running interconnects. They are running now video between offices. They are running customer call centers and contact centers. They need to have their network availability at all times. And they're doing a little bit of toll bypass by going office to office and making calls out from one to the other. So this means that we're looking at real-time alerts. Are they up? How is it working? Status of the servers. Are things connected? What is the call quality? And doing a little bit of fraud prevention. So for this, we've done a combination of Isinga using various Nagios modules specifically designed for the Asterisk functions, and that will be the next slide. We're using Homer for call quality between the offices. Between headquarters and the United States Boston office, they were running into some rather unusual call qualities. It would work fine if they did it over regular toll calls. It worked fine sometimes if they did it over IAX2. It did not work if they tried doing it into one of the conference centers, one of the AT&T GoToMeeting type centers. And it was like, okay, why does this work this way but not there? We pulled in Homer to do SIP traces to figure out what was going on and then move them back to IAX2. Humbug was being used for fraud prevention and monitoring. Now, one of the interesting things that we finally found through doing the monitoring and the checking is that they had one office where they were running an Asterisk box connected to a local ISP, which was the only ISP that they were connecting to directly via SIP. Everything else was doing some sort of a SIP to PRI gateway or straight PRI or something, so there was no problems. We didn't expect it. We get down to this one remote office, and suddenly we're finding out that we're having trouble where the media is being blocked one direction. You can call out, you can hear the other end, you can't hear internally. We eventually found out that through log tracing and again SIP tracing, that the problem in this case was their Palo Alto firewall doesn't play nice, or didn't play nice. Supposedly it's been fixed, I haven't tested it yet, with SIP. So because the carrier had a media and a routing server for the SIP connection, we were able to bring media in, but we weren't able to send media out. It was getting blocked by the firewall. And it took SIP traces to actually figure out what was going on. Okay, so what we have here, simple Isinga monitoring, and what you've got, hello, there we go. So what we've got here is we actually have the server. Oh, you don't see the mouse, never mind. Okay.
What's different from that from Nagios?
The difference between, okay. It's a very good question, I'll explain. Nagios is an open source project that was running for many years, ran into a lot of problems with how the databases were working, the speed of processing alerts, and the flexibility on the front end. It forked off to Isinga 1. So every Nagios plugin works fine on Isinga 1, okay? Then they went last year and they completely rewrote Isinga, still using the same interfaces to the Nagios plugins, but they went for a more web, more enhanced view. And I'll show that in a couple of slides with one of the other customers. The differences between them, now that Nagios has finally caught on and has updated and upgraded its philosophies, is more of a philosophical question between doing it this way or doing it that way, because they're effectively a fork that have very similar functions. The people we're working with are the UK, Israeli, Nagios, vendor, trainer, et cetera. So the slides I've got are Isinga based. But they are all Nagios plugins except for the ones that we wrote ourselves. So, and to be honest, they have all of the Asterisk configuration plugins set up to look at servers, number of calls, all sorts of things off of the Asterisk that you can run straight out of the plugin. So here we were just looking at server level. What is the status of each server? What is the ping time? What is the delay? What is the status there? Then what we went into is going down to the actual individual services. And it doesn't show up so well on this screen. Okay, so you're actually seeing, are the processes are up? Are the connectivity up? Everything down, number of calls, number of services, and it's checking. Okay, next one is an MVNO running out of the UK. They provide a lot of services to IoT devices, some cellular. So they've got a lot of connectivity issues, and the idea of they need to be up and running and monitoring all the time. So again, it's looking at what their status is, looking at the real-time alert, connectivity, call quality, same kinds of things. It's just going from 11 PBXs, handling 1,500 end-user devices spread out around the world, to now you're running at 500,000 end-user devices that are connected, and the order of magnitude is larger, but the requirements are effectively the same. So again, they're also running the standard Isinga. This is the Isinga 1 screens, not the Isinga 2 screens. So again, you see the various servers connected and everything up and running for that. Okay, looking at the service, this one is monitoring the service. I said it's somewhere between 18 and 19,000 PBXs running on the service currently. And what we did was we changed the solution over to the Isinga dashboard, which gives you a different look and feel. So you can see the underlying Isinga 1 screen on the left, and then the dashboard that is now sitting on top of it to give you a better knock size view. Okay, I don't know if any of you are in the position where your customers want to walk into your office and see the big screen, want to feel like you've got the enterprise command deck there and everything is running. These are the kinds of screens that they're expecting to see. Number of faults, number of alerts, potentially number of trouble tickets. So we are doing all of that here. Okay, when you move into the cloud, okay, rather than your own bare metal, okay, how many of you here are running Asterisk on DigitalOcean, Amazon, Google, etc.? 1, 2. How many of you are considering it? Okay, there are a couple more. One of the things that you will find, because you do not run the hardware, you want to look at what tools they make available to you automatically, built in to the service to add to these same things. So you're putting Asterisk on top of a Amazon server. Everything that I've told you up until now stays the same. Plus, you now get the ability to look at the Amazon server and access controls and everything, firewalls in their own services. Okay, for Amazon, it's CloudWatch. Google has Slack Driver. I don't honestly know of anybody who is not running a pure Lynx environment running on Microsoft, DigitalOcean, other clouds. It depends on how much you want. Okay, we're running them on all of the above except for Microsoft, both as free PBX or straight Asterisk, Camilio off the bottom. So look at what they have, look at the APIs they offer. Okay, one of the things that you'll find, for example, Amazon offers you all sorts of database tools that you can run around the back end. So you don't necessarily on the Redis have direct control of the Oracle, for example, but you want to actually be looking at the status of the Oracle from their tools. Okay? Simply put, in this case, size doesn't matter. It's all orders of magnitude, but it's the same problems, it's the same services, it's the same requests. Okay? So for example, single PBX, okay? The lag to the carrier is important. Multi-sites, the lag between the sites and the carrier are important. Are you losing calls? Are you having jitter? Are you having problems? Are things up? Are your links up? Okay? Carriers care more about, okay, the MVNO, et cetera, and the service want to know more about uptime and accessibility. Okay? There are tools that will then allow you to ping into your web service. Okay, if you have a dashboard, if you have a web service, they will check from multiple locations around the world to make sure your service is up and accessible. These are necessary. Other things to consider while you are setting this up. What is the method that you're using for trouble ticketing and reporting? How does your customer let you know there's a problem? I'm reasonably sure that the answer, at least partially for every one of you, is they pick up the phone and they scream. Okay? I don't know about you. I got lucky. When I met my wife, our first date, I was working for MCI. I got called away from the table 3 times because of a problem with Major League Baseball's network. Wasn't even my customer. But 3 times because my teammate was on his honeymoon, I was covering his pager, so 3 times I got called away. She learned early to expect this. But the 3 o'clock in the call from somebody in Sydney going, we can't make calls, I have to call you on my cell phone, they don't go over very well. And that's being polite. Small children, wives, they tend to not like getting the, what do you mean you have to get up out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to fix a customer problem? I'm sure at least half of you have had this category of problem. Okay? Do you offer some sort of a self-service portal? Do you offer some sort of knowledge base for them? In some cases, depending on the service you're offering, it's real easy to create. For others, if it's pure PBX, the answer is, this is how you connect a SIP phone, this is how you log in, and there isn't a whole much more you can give them up front because it's all pretty much you. It's a matter of knowing it, okay? Are you monitoring any changes to your code or to the config files? Okay, which also comes into the intrusion detection change logs, okay? So we have customers who are allowed to go into the PBX and modify the additional files. So you have SIP underscore additional or things like that. They can't touch the main ones, but they're allowed to touch additionals, okay? If they make a change there, it may not affect the system and it may continue working, but it's really nice to know that they made a change and then suddenly the entire server stopped responding for calls. You can look back and go, aha, this person logged in and changed this particular file. Let's go see what they did and look at the config file and see if we need to do a rollback. Okay. These are different tools, different ways of thinking about it. Okay. One of the things that people don't realize is if you are doing the proper monitoring, logging, and checking of these things, you can then do things that are good for the business. I have an excessive number of calls to a particular destination. Should I be negotiating a better rate to that destination with my carrier? I've got places I should be blocking, whitelisting, blacklisting, okay? What kinds of things are done that, or trends? We noticed, for example, with the service, certain peak days were incredible for the service. 10 years ago, the peak days for traffic were Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Mother's Day. Worldwide, these were the peak days of traffic for most carriers. Last year, we noticed that Ilafid was the peak day for traffic exceeding Mother's Day by almost 500,000 calls. Okay, so the end of Ramadan suddenly becomes really important depending on where your traffic is going to. Okay, depending on where you're dealing, suddenly you've got the Super Bowls ending and everybody's calling to go, did you see that shot? Okay, you need to look at the traffic, you need to look at the patterns. I'm sure Monday night around things, Twitter and phone calls went completely nuts between Clinton and Trump. Never mind. I'm not going to phrase it that way. Looking for trends, looking for patterns, understanding when your network is vulnerable or going to be hit hard will help you plan for it in advance. The idea is to see trends so you can predict the future. Okay? Things that you need to consider, security considerations. This is my step back into previous years, okay? Hits on the internet and hits on the telecom are at an all-time high. In the past year, you've had a number of major hits, TalkTalk being the one that's most relevant here. You have carriers, you have services getting hit for millions of customers of subscription data. What you do if you're offering services for PayPal or customer credit card information, you need to pay attention to this. The fact that people are hacking into each of these systems is just one side that's very public. Less public are the ones, which is the bottom example. Over 4 years, a group of 4 guys, all under the age of 25, hacked into PBXs here in the United States to a tune of over $50 million. Okay? They'd hit the system, they'd go and they'd create all sorts of false bank accounts all over the world, and then they'd start doing fraudulent calls into premium rate numbers. I assume everybody here knows premium rate numbers, yes? Okay? Simple fact of the matter is a premium rate number in certain places is basically a revenue share for fraud between a telco and a customer. And it literally is nothing more than that. Sometimes it's rather blatant that it's set up strictly for fraud. You will call up, the telco gets 50%, you get 50%. At a half a dollar, that's nothing. At $5, $10, $20 a call, that tends to add up very rapidly. So they take the money, the telco then puts it to somebody's bank account automatically, they siphon it out around the world, and they hit 50 million bucks. In this particular case, they used 650 bank accounts to do it. One of them came into the States after having been ratted out by one of his colleagues, got over 6 years of prison time and a huge fine. So we have to be on guard. We have to be looking at what is happening. And that is both looking at logs, this is looking at systems, this is looking at real-time events, okay? So all of you are familiar with the concept of brute force attacks. How many of you actually watched one? Okay, so that's 3 of you. So I'm not about to change that. This was a brute force attack against the single PBX customer I mentioned. Okay, and you'll see it's just scroll through. They're hitting guesses at the extension, and they are using a fixed dictionary of passwords. Okay, I'm not going to run it through I've got like a minute of video here. Okay, things we found. Okay, and I've known this for 6 years because we've heard the horror stories. We've watched customers take a PBX, reset it to default password, and in under 10 minutes, it's found and hacked. 3 years ago, while we were in Atlanta, we sat up and we talked about a product called Shodan HQ, which is Google for devices. You can go into this, you can type in Polycom default password, Cisco default password, and it will give you a list of the devices, IP addresses, etc., that come up with and respond to the default password. So we sat there, we put one up on the screen, and just did a quick search. Somebody in the back of the room, within a minute, was inside the Polycom phone. Had hacked the phone, not the PBX, but the actual phone, and was able to initiate calls, whatever they wanted from it. This is a problem of knowing what to watch, when to watch, how to watch. Okay? They're looking for common extension numbers. Okay, and we had a discussion in DevCon, and I don't think that it's going to happen. There should be a set of basic rules that we enforce. The extension number and the password should not be allowed to be the same. The secret shouldn't be 100, 100. Admin, admin. They should not match that easily. It's like, okay, this is opening a door saying, please, steal all of my money. Okay? And one of the things which I'll show in the passwords, they know what kinds of applications they're looking for. So having gone through this particular list of the attack, I went and I looked. The passwords that they are using to attack, okay, you'll notice, AskConf, dialer, live chat, manager, okay? Then the more common 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my secret, password, they substitute things out, but they're looking at particular common terms. Okay, all of you here have been installed Asterisk more than once, I presume? Okay, all of you know that there are default configs and default extensions and things that come pre-configured there as examples. How many of you actually remember to go back and comment them out every time? I don't see a single hand. The problem is there are a lot of defaults, a lot of configs out there that people do this to, and they have no idea what they're doing or how they're doing it. even the people here in the room who supposedly know what we're doing, people are still going out there and going out and buying at Costco. I remember last year seeing a $20 in-house PBX unit that you plugged in, 4 or 5 extensions off of it, and effectively it was a little $20 Asterisk box, all using default username, passwords, and extension, everything. Any questions? Any? I actually got it exactly in the half hour that I allocated. Cool.
Oh, is Hamburg free, or I thought it was a
Okay.
pricey situation?
Humbug has 2 flavors, and this will be changing between now and the end of the year because the legal status of Humbug has changed, so it will be rebranded a little bit over the next couple of months. There is a free version that will do fault monitoring and reporting, minimal level of call analysis and details. Then there are tiered plans depending on CDRs that you anticipate per month. It's usually something like 1/1000th of a cent or 100th of a cent per CDR for 10,000. So it's like you can get, for $10 a month, it was like something like 10,000 CDRs a month to process. Larger numbers go from there. So this is Humbug. There are, well, as long as he's being nice, we've got 14net who does other kinds of fraud monitoring on a very different category. There are a number of solutions from different philosophical differences. Are you looking at the voice of the person who's calling to make sure that they're not sounding like they're lying to the person in your call center? Then you want pin drop. Okay, if you want to look at actual traffic at CDRs, you're looking at Humbug. If you're looking at other things, they're different products for different uses. Other questions?